Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another review from Fanboys Forever. And I hope you all like the little setup that I have going here. I just kind of took a crack at throwing together sort of a little miniature diorama for the subjects of our review to battle in a little bit later, because today we are going to be looking at the Mezco 5 Points Ultraman and Red King box set. Now 5 Points is their more limited articulation line where they do sort of more retro styled figures. And of course Ultraman is a fine candidate for this treatment as he is a very retro property. But there's more to him than that, as Ultraman has a new film releasing this weekend in Japan, Shin Ultraman, and I'm very excited about it, and so we're celebrating that release by having a look at this set. So having a look at exactly what you get inside the box, you can see that it is Ultraman and Red King just in a plastic tray with their accessories, and you also get a cool diorama that you can fold together. This comes broken down into 3 parts. You have the main base. You'll just want to bend it to where the mountains are up like this. You'll want to take the front piece and take the tab on the bottom and just bend it back like that and remove the tiny little slits of cardboard that come out. You'll then just want to pop these little tabs up like so and simply slide those little slits into the tabs. You likewise do the same with this piece that goes behind it. And you end up with a pretty serviceable little display with several different levels to give it a cool effect, especially if you photograph it from the right angles. I really like that. And the figures look nice on it, but I'm going to be sticking with the display I made. As you can see, somehow my diorama now has mountains. Waste not, want not. Of course, we'll go ahead and get to the main event of the set, Ultraman himself. Now, if you're not familiar with Ultraman, it is a Japanese tokusatsu series about struggles against alien invaders. Everything changes, though, when Shin Hayata is inadvertently gravely injured or killed, depending on how you look at it, by a visitor called Ultraman, who came to Earth fighting an alien that was trying to invade. Because Ultraman is a virtuous character who comes from a place in our galaxy called the Land of Light, he decides to restore Hayata's life, fusing himself to him and allowing him to turn into the giant Ultraman whenever there's trouble and save the day. Hopefully that is at least partially comprehensible about what Ultraman even is. And like I said, this weekend in Japan, Shin Ultraman comes out, which is a new interpretation of the classic character. This is not based on that, however. This is instead based on the original classic 60s series. So I'm very excited to get right into it. First of all, you can tell this is not a super articulated figure just by looking at it. Obviously, this is a 5 points of articulation figure, which is why the line is called 5 points. You can see that it has 1 point here at the neck. You have a couple of points at the arms, which can go all the way around. Nothing at the waist, of course, and then the legs can move independently of one another, making up the aforementioned 5 points right there. You can see that Ultraman has a blue gem in the middle of the chest, which is called the color timer. The color timer dictates that Ultraman can only fight for around 3 minutes before he runs out of power. So this is not a feature in the new film, but it is something from the classic series. What the figure lacks in articulation, it definitely makes up for, though, in cool, show-accurate details. I'm really liking all the little folds in the cloth as if it were a bodysuit, just like the performer wore on the show. I like things like the ears and the mouth shape being exceedingly accurate, and the physique of the hero is very much in line with the show. Everything down from the boots to the gloves to the iconic helmet, all the way to the fin on the back where the performer was kind of zipped into the suit. Everything looks fantastic with very, very minimal kind of paint imperfections. So minor, they're not really even worth mentioning in a review like this one. Now, the worst thing about the 5 points is because he looks so cool, you can't do a whole lot of the things you want him to do. However, there is one pose that you are able to do that I think every Ultraman fan would want to do with this guy. Ultraman has a signature move that you can accomplish by switching out the arms. Anybody who's ever got one of these sets before knows that switchable arms is kind of their thing, like with the Popeye set. By switching the arms out, Ultraman is able to perform the iconic Spatium Beam pose. And this is something that is just a tradition for the Ultraman series on the different forms of the character. Many of them, of course, pull off this iconic move where he puts his arms in the sign of a cross and then blasts his foes with a beam of light. So this is just awesome to have it like this. This is probably how I will keep it, just because it's more interesting to look at the figure like this, and you can do some great battle poses like this. The only other thing that I wish they would have done is included the arms where they're kind of flayed out like in sort of the wrestler pose or the sumo pose, because Ultraman gets into that grappling pose quite a bit, and I think that would have been cool. But you can sort of mimic that by having him, I guess, lean over slightly with the regular arms. But still, this is a really, really nice little inclusion. But that's not all you get. Mezco's here to absolutely spoil us with this beautiful nondescript black stand. And even though it's not very flashy, certainly you don't want to draw attention away from the characters and the diorama that you get anyway. And there he is on his stand. Now, I think this guy is pretty well balanced, and I've had him standing quite a bit without this, but it's still nice to have some insurance, especially if you're going to put him in a scene like I've created where it may be harder for a figure to find its footing. Here is Ultraman in his element as the giant hero that we all know him to be. And he looks great in a giant, like a cityscape or the mountains. Needless to say, this is a familiar sight to us fans of the show, as we see Ultraman often in these sorts of environments. One of Ultraman's more infamous foes in the classic era was the Red King. Now, I know what you may be thinking when you first look at this. It's sort of comical and sort of corny, definitely, you know, a guy in a suit. But that's part of the charm of old school Ultraman. And also, we need to show respect to Tsuburaya Productions, who were pioneers in so much suitimation and definitely just masterful in what they did. Truly, they were accomplishing miracles on television on a shoestring budget and brought the giant monster genre to television in Japan, a previously untapped market for that sort of thing. So looking at the figure, like I said, the paint detail is especially impressive because you have this paint all in the folds and all of the kind of like armadillo-like texture of the armor plates. So I think that's really nice. It's a very well executed kind of wash or something. It's definitely an interesting paint treatment. I like the armored tail in the back. Just everything about it, I think, is just quality, the way that the paint was applied. I also really like the head sculpt. It definitely carries the essence of the suit, and the paint is exceedingly well applied. I can't find a single flaw. Just like Ultraman himself, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of articulation. You'll notice that they got it by not having the head articulate because it's kind of too ingrained, I guess, in the sculpt of the neck, but instead the tail is the 5th point. This guy doesn't have any of the alternate limbs because what exactly would you do anyway? It's funny because the arms are kind of halfway bent, and the way that the legs splay out when you bend them, you can kind of get more actiony stuff out of Red King than you can Ultraman. That's kind of funny, but I just feel like that's sort of the way the sculpt worked out. The people in the monster costumes were almost always much, much more severely limited than the Ultraman performer. He does come with a couple of accessories, though. One of them is a boulder. I wish we got more stuff like this in action figure sets, just generic props like this, and really great for recreating scenes from the show, their iconic battle. And you can see that, yes, the figure can hold it, but it can drop it. So you can get the arms at just the right angle, and you can wedge that in like that, and it looks really, really, really good. So I'm really glad that that was an option. Of course, Mezco continues to spoil us with these beautiful nondescript stands, and he just pegs right in, and Red King is ready to join Ultraman in the diorama. And here we have our combatants fighting it out. Of course, these figures are in the 3 3/4 scale. If I hadn't mentioned it earlier, you can see that if you put, say, a 7-inch He-Man figure in there, now he's a kaiju, right? I think this is a really fun set, particularly because it wasn't a Mezco exclusive, and it was just a general release. So that means you can find it all over the place and often at a discounted price. By now, I'm seeing it go for around the $25 or $26 mark on places like Amazon and other toy stores. Hopefully, though, it was a fair success for Mezco so that they'll continue doing these sets for the other Ultramen, particularly Ultra 7, Ultra Taro. I would even like to see things like Ultraman Great. Ultraman is the kind of thing that the more I learn about it, and the more that I look up, the more that I appreciate it and the more I enjoy it. So definitely check it out. Shout has lots of different box sets now for the classic series, and the stuff you can't find is usually on YouTube. So there's all sorts of great ways to enjoy the show. And for those that are already Ultraman fans, are you excited about Shin Ultraman? I certainly envy our Japanese friends across the sea who are getting to watch it this weekend. I wait with bated breath so that I can see this new movie, and certainly interested in what Hideki Anno has planned for the film after seeing the excellent Shin Godzilla. It's important to note that in some of the pictures you're seeing now, I have just bought some of the bare minimum cheapest little monster toys you can buy, like the unexpectedly cool Final Faction figures at the Dollar Tree, as well as some generic dragon that I found at Walmart for less than $2. So it's really great to have Ultraman in the scale because you can just throw all sorts of stuff at him, just for fun. Well friends, be sure that you like the video, it really does help us out, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. This is definitely a way for me to test to see if there's any interest out there for more tokusatsu related videos, because I would love to talk about more Ultraman in the future. So let me know down below if this is something you want to see, and of course give me your thoughts on Ultraman, or if you're a fan of it in any way. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.